Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Administrator Carranza as well as Secretary Mnuchin for being with us here today and taking time out of your very busy schedules. So thank you so much for being here, both of you. While we all agree we must be forward-looking as we continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, the topic of today's discussion is equally important. We must continue to work together to ensure the federal government's relief efforts face sound and prudent oversight. These programs were developed to assist the nation's smallest firms. Instances where ineligible businesses and entities, including political organizations who benefited from the programs, must be examined closely. Take, for example, the over $300,000 taxpayer-backed loans that were received by the Ohio Democratic Party in May. And Madam Chair, for the record, I would oppose such a bailout for the Republican Party as well, but it happened to be the Democratic Party in Ohio that took advantage of this, and I don't think it was ever intended for that type of thing to happen. Additionally, oversight of how well the billions of dollars allocated to assist small businesses was utilized is imperative. That will help us to formulate a future strategy and to make well-informed decisions that benefit the greatest number of Americans. I happen to represent most of the city of Cincinnati. For the past few months, I visited with countless small businesses and obviously many of their employees as well. And I and my staff have spoken with representatives from the Cincinnati African American Chamber of Commerce and the Urban League. Some of our smallest businesses, particularly those in minority and economically disadvantaged communities, oftentimes the smallest businesses and typically under 10 employees, they didn't, when this started, and many of them still don't, they didn't have the strongest relationship with banks or credit unions when they were seeking these loans. So I think that it's something that we, and I know as this has evolved, and the chair has been instrumental in that effort as well, and we've worked with her and her staff on that. But we have to make sure that those folks in these economically disadvantaged areas have access to this, because as I say, oftentimes the relationship they've had with the banking institutions, financial institutions, just isn't there. So it makes it even tougher for them. Now, it's impossible to legislate from Washington for every single situation across the country. Likewise, it's impossible to regulate from Washington for every scenario that may come up. All of the folks in this room recognize this and have been reminded since March of that structural impossibility. Congress acted quickly earlier this spring. Speed was paramount in getting funds into the hands of small business owners to keep them afloat when they were forced to shut down through no fault of their own. Consolidating 6 months of legislative work in a little more than 6 days, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, Republicans and Democrats working together, and it was signed into law by President Trump on March 27th. This more than $2 trillion economic relief package delivered on our commitment to do everything possible to protect the American people from the public health and economic impacts of COVID-19. The CARES Act created the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. Following passage of this landmark legislation, the SBA and the Department of the Treasury worked tirelessly to execute the law and issue regulations to inform borrowers and lenders alike how the program would be administered. To the credit of everyone involved, the first loans flowed from private lenders 7 days, just 1 week later on April 3rd. Since that date, the PPP program has distributed nearly 5 million loans to small firms in the amount of over $500 billion. In my district and the surrounding area alone, small businesses utilize the program to preserve nearly 500,000 jobs. These successes cannot be ignored, and Ohio isn't alone. This program provided small businesses and their workers a lifeline across the entire nation. Were there bumps in the road? Of course. As I stated earlier, it's very difficult to get a program this size up and running in a week. Have there been communication issues between the federal government and the lenders and the borrowers? Undoubtedly. But that is one of the reasons why we're here today. We must examine and learn from the past and prepare for the future. Unfortunately, there are still challenges that are presenting obstacles for the nation's smallest firms. Because we continue to face this threat, we must be forward-thinking. More needs to be done, and we have proven that when we work together across the aisle, across the Capitol, and across the different ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, we can move mountains. We aren't done yet, and I look forward to engaging with you, Madam Administrator, and you, Mr. Secretary, as well as you, Madam Chair, as we continue to work for American small businesses. I want to thank you both for being here, and again, thank the Chair for holding this hearing today, and I yield back.